Life can get hectic when you start a family, but which can help you make confident decisions from improving your home to financial planning. We'll make sure you're prepared. Whether you're looking to reduce your household bills, seeking advice around your child's health, or want to find our best buys for your new home, Which has got you covered. Use our expert advice to make the right choices for you and your growing family by visiting which.co.uk/growing family. That's where you'll find everything you need to make confident decisions and have peace of mind that all the advice you're getting is 100% independent. So to find out more, just head to which.co.uk/growing family.
When life gives you questions, Which? Get answers.
Welcome to the Which Money Podcast, your weekly hit of money news and personal finance hacks to help make you better off. I'm your host, Lucia Ariano, and here's what's coming up this week.
Every year we do two kind of large pieces of research into home insurance, and we use that survey research to rate insurers. We've got no which recommended providers.
They used some terms and conditions to void the policy after putting me through all of this investigation, and they voided the policy on the Friday before Christmas.
This week, we're looking at home insurance. Now, earlier this week, we revealed our yearly survey of the best home insurance policies on the market right now, and it doesn't make for good reading. Prices are on the rise and satisfaction levels are down. So is it still possible to get a good deal on your policy? Well, to tell us more about the survey and to give us the best advice on getting the right cover for your home is Which senior writer and insurance expert, Dean Sobers. Welcome to the show, Dean.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for joining us again. And a little bit later on in the show, we will be speaking to someone who is having a really horrendous time with their insurer. And we'll be hearing the awful reality of this complex home insurance claim. But first, Dean, I mentioned Which has been doing some research into insurance customers' experiences. What have you found? What's the latest?
So every year we do two kind of large pieces of research into home insurance. So we do a what's called a customer satisfaction survey, where we survey people who've made a recent claim, and we use that survey research to rate insurers. We give them each a customer score. And then what we also do while we're doing that is we look at loads of different insurance policies. So this year it's been 75 policies, I think, from 33 providers, and we rate their policies on how comprehensive we think the cover levels are. And then out of this work, we have two kinds of rating or two kinds of endorsement that we will give providers that we think are doing a good job. So one is the Which recommended provider, which is basically us saying that we think the insurance company is a really good company. And then the other one is our Best Buy policies, and that's specifically about the policies. And we're kind of saying, and what that means, if a insurer has Best Buy policies, it kind of means that we think that those policies sort of stand out amongst the crowd for their levels of cover. So we've got 11 Best Buy policies from 8 providers. We've got no Which recommended providers.
How does this feel to you? Because it doesn't feel too great to me, especially the no Which recommended providers. How does it compare to previous years, and could it be the worst you've seen?
So we started the Which recommended provider scheme in May 2010, and I was here. And
Congratulations.
That's 14 years ago. We actually haven't had a year during that span in which we haven't given at least one provider a recommended provider award. So it is, it's quite noticeable. What I'd say, it doesn't mean that we have found this year that all the providers are awful. It just means that we haven't found a provider that has really kind of stood out as appearing to be a provider that both kind of goes the extra mile according to the customer feedback that we receive, while also offering really good cover.
Are there some standout reasons why?
So it's quite difficult to actually get underneath those scores and work out exactly why customers have been a little bit muted in their enthusiasm this year. But what we do see when we kind of take a step back is there is a lot of stuff going on in home insurance at the moment that might help explain it. So just last month, the Financial Ombudsman Service reported that the numbers of buildings insurance complaints reached a 10-year high. And also at around the same time, so end of August, the Financial Conduct Authority, the industry regulator, released a new set of claim statistics. And what they showed was that across the year 2023, which was the latest data that it's published about, nearly 4 in 10 buildings insurance claims were rejected, and about 3 in 10 claims on combined, so that's buildings and contents policy. So that's the type of policy that most people have. So around 3 in 10 claims on those policies were rejected. Now, these are actually very high rejection rates when you compare it to other types of insurance. With most types of insurance, 90% or more of claims are accepted.
And premiums have shot up. By exactly how much?
So according to the comparison website Go Compare, the average premium for combined cover in quarter 2 of this year, so that's April to June, was £241. And that was 31% up from where it was at the same time last year.
Well, shall we bring in Claire then? So Claire Massey, last year she made a claim on her home insurance and now 19 months on is still trying to get it resolved. Welcome to the show, Claire. Thank you so much for joining us. Shall we start then from the beginning? Can you take us back to last year? What happened at your home to make you claim on your insurance?
I was just about to have a kitchen fitted. And I was drying out plaster with a dehumidifier and it caught fire and burned overnight. So we were very lucky to get out of the house. After that, obviously contacted Policy Expert to start the claim, and that's kind of where the problems really began.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I just can't imagine what an awful experience that must have been. Well, should we talk about then what happened next? So were you moved to alternative housing?
No, the information that we had from Policy Expert was very limited. There was no real guidance on what we should do. It was my children and I. We initially stayed with my ex-partner, which wasn't ideal, but it was the only place that we could go to. And then I found out from a friend that I would be allowed to have like a daily allowance, if you like, if we stay with family or friends or... So that was the initial kind of approach, because I just had no concept of how bad the damage was. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know how long we would potentially be in, sofa surfing, if you like. And there was just no information coming out of Policy Expert to give us any indication of what the process was.
I mean, Dean, this sounds awful to me. What should the process been like here?
Well, obviously, if a person is making a home insurance claim for something that's extraordinarily traumatic, like a house fire, then what you would expect is that the insurer would be able to kind of accommodate that. They would be able to take account of the likely kind of traumatized and sort of emotional state of the customer. So their communications, you would hope, would be very good. They'd be able to sort of convey a clear sort of understanding with the customer of what to expect, kind of what to do, and how long things are likely to take, and then also accessible points of contact if the customer's got any queries, so that they don't feel like they're kind of not sure what's going to happen next or who to get in touch if something's going wrong.
And Claire, can we just rewind a little bit then, and can you walk us through what happened? So you had your traumatic experience with the fire. Now what? Walk us through the steps from there.
So, like I said, I put in a claim that the information was limited. At this point, it was very up in the air. It was really traumatic. I didn't really know what was best to do. I was told that surveyors would come round and assess the damage. There were 2 visits by 2 different individuals where they came to the house and made an assessment. And one of the surveyors kind of indicated to me that I could appoint cleaners to come into the home. Turns out that I shouldn't have done that because I didn't have permission from the insurance company. So I'd already paid like £5,000 to start the cleaning, and I was told, well, you're not going to get that back because you shouldn't have done that. Then Trinity Claims sent in their cleaners into my home, and they started to clean. And that's when things started to go really wrong, because every time I went into the house, I could just tell that the cleaning that they were doing wasn't right. They were using dirty rags in buckets of cold water. And I could just tell, even though I'm not an expert on insurance or anything, I could just sense that there was something seriously wrong. So I made a complaint to Trinity, and they said, we disagree with you. We don't, the cleaning that we're doing is up to standard. And because you've pulled us out of the house and you've appointed a representative, we're not going to pay for your accommodation anymore. And they withdrew the accommodation. And for 4 months, my children and I were homeless.
Oh, it's just horrendous, isn't it? I mean, I can't imagine how this must have felt going through this. I mean, Dean, what do you make of this? How does this sound to you, given how you expect it should go?
In theory, if a customer does something that is if they're unreasonable and they do something that obstructs the progress of a claim, then an insurer might argue that because the customer is causing a delay, that we're therefore, we're not going to pay for for these extra weeks or months or whatever it might be of alternative accommodation payments. But in order to do, kind of in reality, in order to do that, they kind of have to be on really solid ground about the nature of kind of why the claim has been delayed. But to feel that the way that it should solve that disagreement is by basically walking away from the claim and leaving the customer without a place to live and separate from their family, that seems like quite a difficult thing to defend. And as I think Claire's going to tell us, she took that to the Financial Ombudsman Service and they agreed with her.
Well, let's hear about that then, shall we? Because, to me, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound fair. And that is the time to bring in the Financial Ombudsman Service. And I'm pleased to hear they have stepped in. So can you talk us about that experience and kind of where you're at with that?
So this was the first complaint of 3. All 3 were upheld. The first one, I took it to the Ombudsman in May. It took them 2 months to investigate that particular case. Trinity Claims and Policy Expert were ordered to reinstate the alternative accommodation and also to pay me some compensation for the distress and a few other bits and pieces like contents. They had to write up quite a lot of my contents and I got some money for that. But so that was the first battle. At this point, though, I'd already, because we had no home. So by this point, I'd found a rental that was suitable for our family's needs. And it coincided with Policy Expert re-engaging. So I put it to them, I found this rental, I'm moving in June. Can you cover the costs? And they went, no, it's too expensive. There's other properties out there that you can go to. And I was like, there aren't. They sent a couple through and I said, these aren't suitable. They're not suitable for my needs. There's not enough bedrooms for a start. They really pushed back on that. So I had to do another massive exercise of going on Rightmove, going on all the hotel websites, going on Airbnb to prove to the insurance company that this was the only property that was available and suitable. And in the end, after doing all of that, they agreed. Oh, and the Ombudsman also ruled that they had to clean my house properly. So a more professional setup came in and cleaned to a better standard. But it has since been proved that it's still not clean. That's recent. It's quite complicated. I'm sorry.
No, don't. It really shouldn't be you apologising for all of this, should it? I think that we definitely have made that clear.
So anyway, the house is cleaned, and then it was getting to the point where we were discussing surveyors, and Trinity and Policy Expert said you can't use your own surveyor, which is a term in the policy that I had no idea that would impact me so severely at this point. I couldn't understand why I couldn't use my own surveyor since it's my house and I needed to be assured that any surveyor report was fit for purpose, especially with all the problems I'd had with the cleaning company. They refused. So that became another complaint to the Ombudsman. Around this time, I think, Dean, you were about to publish a story and you reached out to Policy Expert for comment. And it was at this point that they seemed to have re-looked at my whole claim and policy and everything and told Dean before me that they were voiding the policy rule because they said that I'd misrepresented myself. So I found out after Dean found out that this was happening.
Specifically, they didn't say that they were going to void the policy, but they said that they'd found this information which could result in the policy being voided. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Yes. So that happened, and then I was investigated by their fraud team, and I had to go and be interviewed. This is November now. I had to go and be interviewed in front of a panel to basically defend how I'd taken out the policy. And again, this is where I feel that there are real problems with insurance as a whole, because I used a comparison website to sign up. I used the market, and I answered all the questions honestly. But the answers that Policy Expert needed were not questions that I was asked. And then they determined the outcome of some of the algorithms to mean something that wasn't actually reflective of what I'd said. They used some terms and conditions to void the policy after putting me through all of this investigation. And they voided the policy on the Friday before Christmas and withdrew all the accommodation funding again. So they left me in the lurch at Christmas time. So it ended up being another complaint to the Ombudsman. And it was ruled in my favour again.
You really have been put through hell and back. It does sound like. I'm so sorry to hear your experience, but thank you so much for sharing it, because it's so important. And I cannot wait to hear where you're at right now. And I'm sure our listeners are in the same boat. But first, can we just go back to this point about how it can go wrong using a comparison website? Because this is one of our golden rules, isn't it?
Yeah. So all different insurers kind of want to know slightly different things about their customers. So you might, when you're running a quote on a comparison website, you might be dealing with like 100 different insurers or more. All of them, if you went to them directly, would ask you slightly different questions or slightly different worded questions. But obviously you can't answer all of those questions when you're running a comparison site quote. So you just fill in one form, which is a comparison sites form. And that information is passed off to the insurers, and they have to interpret those answers. Sometimes that will be fine, but in some areas, it won't give those insurers exactly what they were hoping to find out. And they've got two ways of kind of dealing with this when that happens. So one thing that they can do is they can make assumptions. And then the other thing that they can do is they can ask you some extra follow-up questions before you actually buy the cover. What happened here was, at least as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Claire. So Claire had used part of her property to rent out, for Airbnb hosting, basically. So paying guests were in part of the property. She wasn't actually asked any clear or specific questions about whether or not this was the case when she applied for the cover, or in any part of the journey that she went on when, so from going to the comparison site through clicking through to the insurer. So she wasn't asked that question, basically wasn't put to her. So she didn't answer yes or no to it. The insurer policy expert basically made an assumption that she had effectively answered no to that question, because it didn't have any information that she did use her property for this purpose, if that makes sense. So
it does make sense. I suppose my initial question is, can they do that? Is it okay? It does feel like it's on the onus for for it to be in that list of questions, and assumptions. I mean, assumptions just aren't okay, are they?
So the short answer is no. They're not supposed to do that. They're not supposed to hold you responsible for questions that they haven't asked you. Usually these sorts of situations won't arise, but sometimes they do arise, and sometimes the only way that they can actually be resolved is by going through this quite protracted complaints process, escalating to the Financial Ombudsman Service, and basically waiting around for months and months and months to see what comes of it.
after this whole experience, is anything being done to change, to add in a question around this?
I'm not sure. With the comparison site end, I'm not 100% sure. I think that Policy Expert might have changed some of the questions that it asks at its end to kind of narrow that down a bit to prevent this sort of thing from happening again, but I'm not sure 100%.
Policy Expert updated their question if you go directly to their website. So they now specifically have a question about annexes, and it says you need to call them. But that question is still not on Compare the Market.
Well, later in the show, we'll be talking about how to find the right cover, and we'll come back to this point, and what you can do to protect yourself in as far as you can. Claire, let's just come back to your story, and I'm really hoping there's some light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, you look happy right now. You're sitting in a lovely office. Tell us, where are you at?
So since all of this has happened, obviously I've been looking on Trustpilot at all the reviews and, the shiny 4 and 5 stars are sign-ups and price. But when you look at the 1-star reviews of these insurance companies, that's where the real problems are. And this is where I started to realise that it's not just me that's going through this problem. There are many, many other people out there that are dealing with really horrific traumatic events and having the same problems as I am. So I decided to create a Facebook group called Claim Guardians, which is open to anybody to join. And we have a growing community now of people that are joining who are experiencing the same problems as I am. And what Claim Guardians is there for is it's a safe place to allow people to come into the group and get some advice and support from people that are going through the same things as what we are. And also to tell them about the rights to information that they have that they may not know about. And I also signpost them to Which as well, because your service is excellent. So, and I know that many of our members have joined up to Which as well. So that's great. For me, something's got to change in this industry. I mean, I've worked in regulation for a long time in the gambling industry, and I've seen the journey that gambling has gone on. And I can see that a similar journey needs to happen with insurance. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. I'm getting a lot of information and I'm trying to influence MPs, the FCA, the ABI, to listen to consumers, because we may be a small group at the moment, but we are a growing group.
It's amazing to hear that you've created this group and you're doing so much kind of beyond what I think people would expect you to be doing. And I feel like people might want to know, your situation now. Have you moved back into your home? Where is that process?
So I'm in another rental. So this is the 5th place that I've lived since the fire. My children are with me, thank goodness. This is a nice rental that I'm in at the moment. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I've had to sign at least 6 month term. I don't know whether the insurance company, Policy Expert, will cover that yet. We have asked the question, but I don't know. We're at a stage where we are now disputing the surveyor's report. So Trinity Claims brought in their surveyor and did a report, and I had to pay for my own surveyor to do a report, and his has come in and it's 8 pages longer. Right. So there is, So that's the next challenge. I'm hoping that, Policy Expert will do the right thing and just get me home quickly. At the end of the day, that's all I want. I want to go home with my children. That's what I said all along. I'm not looking for anything spectacular. I just want my house to be fixed safely and fairly, and I just want to go home. I don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty around the next few months, which is exhausting. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it will be almost 2 years, by the time Christmas is rolling through, it'll be almost 2 years since the fire. But there are people in my group that are looking at 3-4 years Clem's been and still not home. So I'm certainly not the worst case that I've heard. But yeah, that's kind of where I am at the moment.
And I'm sure all of our listeners are hoping for the best for the next few months for you. And just before you go, is there any advice, any last anything you want to say to anybody, really. I mean, it's such such an awful experience you've been through. If there's anything you want to leave us with, then the floor is yours for a moment.
That's a good question. I think I might cry, but I think that even though it's been the worst experience of my life, there are always positives that you can pull out of these situations. I mean, my experience with Policy Expert and the way that I've been treated has been horrendous, but actually I've had some really wonderful support from people out there. I mean, Dean, you've been amazing. Many others. I mean, I've got a loss assessor, Oakleaf, that are representing me, and up until now, that's been a good experience. My surveyor's brilliant, and my friends and family, and it's brought me much closer to my parents as well, which is really lovely. And they see me now as an adult because my dad always saw me as a 15-year-old child, even though I was a 40-year-old, 43-year-old woman. But now they see me as an adult, and they could see what I'm capable of and the strength that I have. And, it's important for me to continue to fight this for the rights of everybody, really. And I guess that's all I want to say. So if there is anybody out there that's, if you just want to join our group, Claim Guardians, just for general information, or, if you're going through a similar experience and you just want to know that you're not alone and that, there are people out there that will support you, then please come and join us. We're on Facebook. It's Claim Guardians.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us today and, being so honest and sharing your story. Best of luck, but I'm sure you'll be continuing to speak with Dean. So I'll have to check in and see how you get on. But best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We asked Policy Expert for a comment on Claire's case. A spokesperson told us Policy Expert accepts the Financial Ombudsman's decision. We have reinstated Miss Massey's policy and proceeded with the handling of her claim in accordance with the Ombudsman's recommendations and in line with our claims process. We are committed to providing the highest level of service to all our customers and look forward to working with Miss Massey to bring this matter to a close.
Well, thank you again to Claire. And now, after a very quick break, Dean will still be here to give us his best and very important advice for finding the right cover for you.
If you're enjoying this podcast from us here at Which, then why not become a Which member? Right now, we've got a special offer, especially for podcast listeners, meaning you can choose any of our 3 membership tiers for 50% off the usual price. Starting at just £39.50 for a full year, you can get Which magazine delivered direct to your door. For the same price, you could also choose a digital Which subscription, giving you access to all of our product reviews, the Which app, and the digital edition of Which magazine. What's more, you'll also be able to use the Ask Which service for personalised one-to-one buying advice. Or why not get a full access Which subscription for just £49.50 for a full year? Don't forget, that's 50% off the usual price. To join Which or to find out more, just head to which.co.uk/podcast offer. That's which.co.uk/podcast offer, or click the link in the description for today's podcast for 50% off a Which annual subscription.
Welcome back to the show. Now, we heard from Claire before the break, and it just shows how important it is to get the right kind of cover for you. Now, Dean, where do we start? How do you do that?
So we've got, some sort of points of advice that we tend to give across quite a lot of different insurance types. I guess the key one would be that everybody has different insurance requirements. So, when it comes to home insurance, you may or may not need insurance to cover contents in your garden because you might not have a garden. You might want insurance that covers damage that's caused by your pets. You might want accidental damage cover or might not want it. Or you might want insurance that extends to cover the contents that your kids take when they go off to university. So there are kind of all of these variables, and it's just really important that you're not paying for cover that you don't need, or that you're not assuming that you're paying for cover that you actually don't have. There's not really any bulletproof way of kind of determining this other than reading the insurance policy wording, which is the longer document that you get shown, not the shorter summary document that most people read. Now, we kind of know that, most people aren't going to sit around reading these things for fun. So in lieu of doing that, one thing that we kind of recommend is just taking a little bit of time to jot down a list of the things that are kind of key to you and the things that you expect to be present in the policy, and then look through the policy wording to actually see if it explicitly mentions these elements as being present in the cover. So I guess that's kind of like our key tip. So one thing that the policy wording won't tell you is how the insurer is going to treat you when you claim. It could look brilliant on paper. It could be a different story once something actually goes wrong and you need the insurer to step in. As a starter, one thing you can do is you can check our reviews on our website. As I kind of mentioned before, we survey a lot of people who have made claims, and we ask them about their claims experience. We've got reviews on our website at the moment of 21 insurers based on their claims handling, and the general experience as well of being a customer with that insurer. So I think those would be my main sort of tips.
And can we just go back to that point that came up in the first half around using comparison websites and how they might fall short? Is there a way that you can protect yourself when you use one?
Yeah, so comparison websites they're a really powerful tool because they allow you to literally compare hundreds of insurers in the amount of time it takes to run one quote. But they do have their downsides, and one of those downsides is the fact that because you're only answering one set of questions, you're not necessarily giving all of the insurers on the panel the specific information that they could use to give you a more accurate or fairer quote. In some cases, there might be kind of an error in interpretation that an insurer makes that could even lead, as it did with Claire earlier, that could even lead the insurer to think that you've misrepresented yourself, and it could lead to a dispute around a claim payment. I think the best thing that you can really do to minimise the chances of any of these things happening, so you fill in your details. You get your quotes on the screen. Assume that these are kind of provisional. You're getting a kind of a you're getting a comparison of generally how these insurers kind of line up on price. But basically once you click through to the policy that you kind of like the looks of, double check that there should be a section towards the end of that buying journey where it should kind of say, here's what here's the answers that we've kind of taken from what the comparison sites told us. Here's how we've plugged it into our kind of database, as it were. And it should be kind of itemized there. Have a look over that and just double check that it actually all seems to make sense, that you haven't answered yes to something and then it's taken it and said yes, but then it's slightly changed the wording, changing the context. If anything's ambiguous, contact the insurer at that point.
Very good advice there. And just before we wrap up for today, let's hear some of the Best Buy policies, shall we? So these are ones that stand out to us for their levels of cover. And I should say, we also check that there aren't any screaming signs that they offer subpar service or have problems accepting claims. So Dean, take it away. What are the best buys that you'd like to flag?
Okay, so yeah, as I said earlier, didn't get any which recommended providers, but that doesn't mean that service is terrible across the board. We've got some providers that kind of passed our tests for seeming to be acceptable or not kind of having screaming kind of red flags that they're not accepting claims or anything, as well as having policies that really impressed us on paper. There were 8 providers that have Best Buy policies, and these are Churchill, Direct Line, Ecclesiastical, NFU Mutual, Privilege, Saga, Sagic, that's the Salvation Army General Insurance, and then Royal Bank of Scotland. So those are the providers.
A lot to remember there, but we will get a link in the description of today's show for anyone who wants to find out more. And Dean, it's been a huge show this. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
I guess I've got a kind of a plea to our audience. So some of you listeners may be aware that a couple of months ago we launched a campaign about insurance. So basically we think that there are problems with the insurance industry, and I think some of these have kind of been revealed today, during this show. We really want to see some action on them, and so these kind of range from poor claims handling to issues like customers who are paying monthly for their insurance, basically paying far more than customers that pay annually, and basically being kind of taxed because they can't afford to pay it all at once. So we started a campaign that's called End the Insurance Ripoff. And part of that campaign is we've got this petition going where we're trying to raise 100,000. We're trying to get 100,000 people to sign it. We're currently somewhere around 70,000. So be really grateful if people could just check it out, really. Just have a look at it, find out what the campaign's about. And, if you've got any stories that you want to share with us, there's a facility there to share that with us there as well. The URL is www.which.co.uk/campaigns/end the insurance ripoff.
With dashes in between each of those last words.
The insurance ripoff, yeah.
It is a bit of a mouthful, but we'll pop a link in the description of today's show. So please do check it out. And thank you again, Dean, for coming on the show today. What a show. And thank you to Claire as well.
Thank you.
Well, a huge thank you again to Dean and Claire for coming on the show today, and to you for listening to this week's episode of the Which Money Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please do hit subscribe to make sure you catch our new episodes as soon as they drop. For daily money news and advice, you can find us on social media at Which Money and online at which.co.uk/money. And we also have a free money newsletter, which is delivered to your inbox every Monday. To sign up, visit which.co.uk/money newsletter. This episode of the Which Money Podcast was written and presented by me, Lucia Ariano, and produced and edited by James Rowe.
Are you thinking about the future and how to protect your loved ones? Creating a will is one of the most important steps you can take to ensure your wishes are carried out and your family is taken care of. That's why we're excited to tell you about a very special offer from Which Wills. Which Wills offers a straightforward, affordable and trusted service for writing your will. Whether you need a simple will or something more complex, our expert team is here to help you every step of the way. With Which Wills, you get access to legal professionals who can answer your questions on a one-to-one basis, customizable options to suit your specific needs and circumstances, and peace of mind knowing that your will is legally sound and your wishes will be respected. You can start the process from the comfort of your own home. Just visit whichwills.which.co.uk/premium-30 to get started. That's whichwills.which.co.uk/premium-30. And if you purchase before the 30th of September, you will get 30% off Which's premium will service. Don't put it off any longer. Secure your family's future today.